This podcast is for anyone that knows they haven't yet found and offered up their best work, but are compelled to seek it out and do it. Are you ready to move your desk? Hello, my friends. How are you doing? It's been a while since we've been meeting together here on this podcast because I have not been podcasting. In fact, I turned off a lot of episodes and I turned them back on, and I think it probably overwhelmed some people in that process. But I'm back and I'm anxious to share some of the things I've been learning going through this process of life school, and wanted to talk about being an edge walker today. And it's funny, I sat down, I'm in Chat GPT a lot, creating documents and such, and I thought I would create this episode with that. But you know what? I don't do well when I have to read episodes. I'll save that for when I read my books on Audible. Right now, I just need to take some of the concepts and share them with you. I feel that's more authentic to me because some things that come up as I talk are things I was intended on sharing, right? And that's the same as conversations. I'll walk into a conversation maybe thinking I need to resolve something or talk about something, but in the process of that, it can meander into different directions. And I'm fine with that. Maybe I have a little ADD. Well, I do have a little ADD, but I'm fine with that because sometimes I learn more in the meanderings. So I'm hopeful today that there will be some things in the meanderings of this topic on edge walking that will be helpful to you. I want to start out with bringing up something I've talked about before in the podcast, but maybe this is your first episode. When I was leaving my job in the Department of Defense, I didn't expect to learn much about other people's fears. I was so worried about my own courage and my own fears, right? But as the news spread about my decision to walk away from a stable, respectable position where I'd kind of made it in the government and I wasn't anywhere near to retirement, it was interesting because people started stopping by my office and some were excited for me. They're like, oh, this is a great, bold leap into a new chapter. You can spend more time with your child, which was one of my big life goals to have a family. I could do some consulting. I was going to learn about coaching. I was going to make some online products and maybe even get some rest or more exercise. But a lot of people were deeply unsettled. And so you could hear it in their questions, like, why would you leave now? Are you sure this is the right time? Do you have enough retirement? Like, what are you going to do? You're retiring early. What if it doesn't work out? And so it was so interesting to go through that process because I started to realize, wait a second, their concerns really aren't about me. Their concerns are their concerns, right? Because their reactions are reflecting their own stories and their own fears and their own hopes and definitions of success. And at the same time as I recognized that, I still took on some of their anxiety, right? Because I do that well. I guess. I was already on the edge anyway. It had taken me a long time to take the decision to leave. I knew it was a huge financial burden and all these things that had to be figured out, but I needed to do it and have the faith to do it. And so I did it. But even though I did that, I was still teetering on the edge, wondering if it was the right decision. One day, one of my colleagues came by and said, your journey reminds me of a scene in Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. And you might remember it. Indiana is standing at the edge of this massive chasm, and he's told that a bridge will appear only after he steps forward. And of course, there's nothing there. There's just air and this huge drop off. And any of you that have climbed mountains know, like, I don't know. Some people aren't afraid. I'm afraid of heights, but I'll still climb the mountain because I'm like scared to death. Of course, I've had to be rescued, but it's it's a scary thing, right? And he's supposed to step out there and there's no bridge. And only when he makes a step will the bridge appear. So that moment has stayed with me because it's what real faith looks like. And you stand on the edge with no solution in sight, no guarantees, not sure who's going to help you take the next step. And there's no roadmap, and you have to step anyway. I've had to do this a lot in my life and a whole lot the last couple of years, especially after leaving my job, because it kind of created a snowball of a lot of other events that needed to be dealt with and decisions needed to be made. And so I've become an edge walker through that process. It's been very hard. It's been tiring. It has stretched me in ways I could not imagine. I'm still going through it. I have lost hope. I have lost faith. I have gone into despair. and desperation and all the D words, it seems like, right? I've felt disregarded and isolated and ignored and disturbed and I don't know, so many different words to describe the process. And whenever you think you've hit the bottom of the barrel, you realize it's a false bottom. There's another bottom to the barrel. And then you'll hit that and realize, oh, wait, there's another bottom here. And it just keeps going down, down, down. And I think that's necessary. It's a condescension that you have to go through if you honestly want to root out all of the bad in you or all the confusion in you or all the whatever is keeping you from being your best self. You go through this process of really tearing yourself down, getting to the root causes of who you are and deciding what you want to change and what needs to remain the same and what to let go of toward truly stepping into what you have to offer the world. So, this edge walking, it's very interesting and can be very, very painful. And I don't think a lot of people are willing to do it. And if you notice you're someone that balks at change and doesn't see that there could be any solution rather than one solution that's right in front of you, or you think there's no way that you can be hired for another job or thought of for another relationship or being able to get out of a mess you're in, this can be a very difficult conversation to have because in that moment, the mind is actually not able to think clearly and cannot see possible solutions. I know that I've been through situations in the last year or so where I have had to drag myself through every step of a certain decision and have had to do paperwork and I've had to go places I didn't want to go and do things I didn't want to do. And every step felt impossible and hard, but I knew I had to do it. And it's so funny when I look back months later, I'll look at some documents, for example, that I thought were incredibly difficult to fill out. And I look back, I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. What? There's nothing hard about that. But because my mind was in so much trauma and anxiety, it was almost as if it was a different language to me, and I had to think or overthink how to fill it out. Like, what did that mean? Was there an alternative meaning to the request or question? And it's unsettling when you're someone that's used to being in environments where you're able to make decisions every hour, lead meetings, create things, and all of a sudden everything is an uphill battle. Think that's just how we feel if we go through anything hard in our life. And hard is, dependent on the person, right? We all have different battles to fight. We all have different weaknesses. And so what might be hard for one person might be easy for another and vice versa. We all know this. But what I've learned in this process is that if you approach these things head on, you will be surprised at a new set of skills that you'll start to acquire. You'll be surprised at the amount of courage and faith you have and your willingness to try new things and explore. It has been said many times that buffalo run into the storm. So instead of running away from it, you imagine them turning around and going backward toward the storm. And what does this do? This actually shortens the amount of time they're in the storm. They're facing the challenge head on and running through it and getting to a more pleasant condition more quickly. As I was just describing all the challenges you can go through, one of the hard parts about those challenges is the loss of clarity in ourselves. And some of us, this is especially me, I lost the ability to make decisions that used to be easy for me. I started to meander and get unfocused and wonder if I was making the right decision because so many things I was going through were the results of my decisions. Now, of course, other people also make decisions that impact you, but I still had a lot of shame. And in that shame, started to doubt myself. And I've seen this in other people as well. Start going, well, is this the right decision? Should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? Does God want me to do this? Maybe that's not what he wants. And you can wallow in that for a while. And pretty soon you can enter this victimhood, right? Like feeling like, well, I just don't know if anything's right. And all these things keep happening to me. And it can be a very dangerous place to go mentally, actually. But I know that a lot of us go there to some depth. And so I understand that. And there's a time where sometimes we need to allow ourselves to sink into that despair and confusion and shame and use it as a chance to learn about ourselves and realize, wow, I may have a lot to learn. I may not be doing something right. Or maybe some of these things have happened to me, but how long do I want to stay in this miserable place? Am I ready to take a step at least? I know I've told some people of this that I speak to regularly that I compare what I'm going through like to a big mud pit where at first when you start unearthing things in yourself and some experiences you're having, you can feel like you're being thrown around in the mud and you can't get up because the mud's just so thick. And anytime you try to get up, you're just pushed back down by something. I said, as you go through that hard part, there's a point in time where you finally are like, you know what? I'm sick of this. I am sick of this, and I have experienced other better things in life before, so maybe I can again. And so you get kind of 1 foot up. So you're still on the ground, but you got your leg kind of trying to get up. And when something tries to push you down, you kind of stay firm a little bit longer. And then you're like, wait a second, maybe I can get my 2 hands in front of the legs. Kind of like if you were a sprinter taking off at the starting light. So you're still in the mud and you're still getting pushed around, but you're trying to wobble up there to get a start on the starting line. And then there's this point where you can get the other leg up and then one of the hands, and then you stand up and you might be kind of wobbly still and you might fall down again, but you're able to get back up quicker. And pretty soon there's this point where you're like, you're standing there in the mud, right? You're like, I know I'm still in mud, but I am standing up and I am not going to take this. And I don't care how far I walk in this mud, I'm at least standing and I'm taking steps forward. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that this is a process of being able to start walking when you're going through hard things. And when you are going through hard things, there actually may feel like there is a darkness around you. And it'll be really hard to take the step, just like Indiana Jones with that cliff. It's going to be really hard to take the step when you feel like there's darkness around you because you're like, it's dark. I can't see the light. I don't know if this is the right step, but you'll take it and you'll take it. Maybe you still won't see the light, but you're like, well, I took one step. Maybe I'll try another. Or maybe you'll go in a different direction and you'll just keep taking those steps. And then suddenly there'll be a little light. There'll be something that happens that kind of tells you, yeah, you're in the right direction, or yes, you're making progress. That place to be is a place where I think a lot of us are going to be more and more going forward. There's a lot of change in the world right now. There's a whole lot of bad stuff going on, but there's a whole lot of good too. And there's a lot of shifts taking place with, especially in work environments and places that people live and with the economy and with politics and the world. There's just so many different changes taking place where you got to be able to pivot. You got to be able to walk into the darkness, hoping for light. I love a quote that I got to hear when I was a young missionary. We had to go to a training center for a few weeks. And in that training center, there was a talk given by Boyd K. Packer, and he talked about how he had to make a difficult choice when he was younger. He had just completed his coursework and a doctorate's degree and was writing his dissertation. And he had a lot of kids, and they hardly had any resources, but because they had spent a lot on education over the years, and so they had even borrowed on their insurance to take care of some of their needs. And they were going to buy a house, and he was counseled to go ahead and buy it. And he's like, "Well, I don't have enough for the first month payment." And he was assured that he needed to go ahead and buy it because he was taking on a responsibility that was very important and that somehow if he had faith that it would all work out. And part of the conversation I really liked, and he said, I was still not at peace. And then came the lesson. Harold Lee said, do you know what's wrong with you? You always want to see the end at the beginning. And at that point, he said, yeah, I want to see at least a few steps ahead. And The Harold B. Lee answered by quoting the 6th verse of the 12th chapter of Ether, which is ancient scripture, and it says, "Wherefore dispute not, because ye see not, for ye receive no witness until after the trial of your faith." And then he added, "My boy, you must learn to walk to the edge of the light, and perhaps a few steps into the darkness, and you will find that the light will appear and move ahead of you." And so it has, but only as we walked to the edge of the light. I have always loved that quote and even get chills as I share it because I remember when I heard it as a 21-year-old and I was leaving my family and friends and I was going to live in Oregon. I didn't know anyone there and I was going to serve. And so all of us that were making that choice, everyone that chooses to go to a place, to go to school, to work, to military, to just try out a new place to live, are all living on the edge of light, even if they know someone there, right? It's a step. You don't know what's going to happen. You can't control it. And so, how can we get used to living on this edge? Well, there's a lot of ways, I think. I know for me, I've gone through this period where I've not trusted my inner compass. And that was one of my greatest attributes, I thought, in the past, that I had a strong inner compass and strong values. And I was sometimes called the rock, in certain situations, because I knew that I was not going to compromise. But I didn't feel about that way about myself anymore. Right? I felt like I'd compromised myself in some ways and settled for less and um, just hadn't put my best foot forward. So I lost a lot of confidence. But I am a planner. So I've been planning since I was very young. I still remember my dad taking me into the bedroom once a month and giving me a little interview and talking to me about goals and that kind of thing. I even earned and received a Young Woman Recognition Award, which is the equivalent of an Eagle Scout for boys. Right? So I took goals seriously and I always do plan ahead. I'm someone who plans my year, my month, my week, my day. I allow flexibility within that, but I plan it around the values and goals that I have. I also planned a lot when it came to retirement. And I read tons of books in the past about stocks and savings and financial stuff. And so I always was invested in stocks and I always had the max 401k and bought Bitcoin and put shorts on stocks and I wanted to be a real estate mogul. Like I learned a lot and I wanted to plan and create a certain future. But it's interesting how life goes, right? Right now, I should have a few $1 million at my disposal because I saved so much and I invested so well, but I don't. A lot of things have happened in my life, and all those choices and happenings mean that that's all gone, like all gone, evaporated into very thick air. And I'm sharing this because I had my entire future mapped out, thinking that I was in control. But I found out that life has twists and turns and different lessons for me to learn. And so after many years of trusting my decision making and planning skills, I have been left in a space where I have stopped trusting my inner compass. I felt like my discernment antenna has been damaged, and it's been a huge learning experience. I no longer know if I'm on the right side of the track or if there is a way forward. And so, what do you do when that's all stripped away and all you have is you? No money, no job, unclear of what the truth is about yourself, about your relationships, and not being considered in the same way you were in the past. Not being considered for the same work opportunities that you still wanted to do, but people weren't thinking of you for, right? And you start doubting everyone and their motives and mostly yourself. So it's a scary place. And at some point, like I mentioned before, you have to make choices because it's jarring. In the process, some of us realize there is no map. We have to get used to walking without a map. And it's time to pay more attention to what you enjoy, what your desires are, what your downfalls are, what risks are involved, because there's unknown endings. And you start to go through a process of realizing that making mistakes is part of learning and growing and trying new things. It's vital. You have to make mistakes, not because you're saying, oh, I'm going to go try to make a mistake, but more like, I'm going to try this and I'm going to acknowledge up front that it might fail. I am all about taking risks. So last week I took a risk on a Friday afternoon. My son gets to play with different friends every Friday because there's no school on Fridays here, which is awesome. It gives more time to play with friends and everything. So I said, "You're done with friends. I don't think we should just sit around the house doing stuff. You can default to some, technology in that case." I said, "Let's take an afternoon adventure." I just got online. I'm like, "Let's see what's within an hour of the house." Just for a different adventure. We'd been to City of Rocks and Castle Rock. We've been on the Snake River, um, Sun Valley, Twin Falls. We've been to these Shoshone Falls, but I looked up Oakley, Idaho, and I found something called TP Rocks, and I'd never heard of it before. I have been to Idaho so many times. I have lived here a couple times. I had never heard of TP Rocks, and it's out by Oakley. So I put my unwilling son in the car and didn't tell him where we were going. Uh, we drove past Oakley, and all of a sudden we hit dirt roads, or more, more like rocky roads. Right? It felt like no one had ridden on these for a couple years, but really, it's probably just because, after all the snow melts and everything, the roads, yeah, there's rocks, more rocks on them. I guess that come down from the hills and the mountains. I got really nervous as we started going these roads. We started to wind around a hill that looked down on the Oakley Reservoir, which is beautiful, but it was very empty feeling because it felt like we were the only ones around. But then we saw a couple boats. We're like, okay, good. There's a few people around. And I couldn't decide whether to keep going because I'm like, the road is not getting better. It is getting worse. And it had the twists and turns. And I didn't know because of the way I'd seen the Oakley Reservoir, if I'd keep coming around curves and seeing big drop offs because there was this big drop off. I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? But I kept going and said there was only about 10 miles on the GPS, but then the GPS stopped working because then you're in the territory where, there's just no reception. And 1 mile felt like 10. So we're veering around these large rocks, not sure where we're going to end up around the next corner. And my son even moved to the front seat because it was so painful bouncing around in the back. So I won't know because I was the driver. But I started to wonder if there were really any TP rocks because there's no astounding view. Any corner we went around, there's no astounding view. If you come around the corner, like at City at Rocks, you're like, whoa, what is this? I didn't know this was here or Castle Rock, but nothing like that. I kept going. And in these moments, I start to go, man, I'm a bad mom. Like, what am I doing? We could get a flat tire out here and who would find us and everything. Now, granted, there are some people that lived out there, but they very much did not want to talk to other humans. You could see the signs in front of their houses. But I got to some rocks that said, "You're there." And we get there and I'm like, this doesn't quite look like teepee rocks. It looks like it's the same material, but they don't look like teepees up close. Maybe they look like teepees from a different view or something. But we got out and walked around and we took a picture or two. And then we got back in the car. Which if I had researched further, I would have known that I was supposed to park there and then take a little hike up more into the mountain or whatever, and then there's some pretty cool TP rocks. So we'll have to go back to it sometime. We had two choices at that point: go back from where we came from or take a stray road that kept on going east, and we needed to go northwest. Well, I looked at the gas mileage. I thought about the situation like, I'm not going to take the risk of a new road right now. I will go back the way we came, even though I know it's rocky and twists and turns, but I also have been on it before. So I know what to expect. It was in this moment driving back that I realized we were still off the grid and unable to communicate and completely isolated, from other humans. And that's where I realized, oh, this is edge walking. This is granted there's a rocky road to go on, but like this is how my ancestors felt. We had ancestors that were pioneers and frontiersmen. They traveled across the United States. Actually, they a lot of them came on the Mayflower, so I have lots of stories about that. The frontiersmen and pioneers and explorers, and these are people with true faith, true courage, right? I just thought, this is in recent years, we've gotten too safe with some things. We need to have our phone, we need to see the directions, we need to have everything available right when we need it. And in that process, there's less and less faith and less courage. And it was a beautiful moment for me realizing I was edge walking. I was taking a risk to try something new that I thought would be good for us. And there was some scariness to it. But as I drove back, I realized, we weren't really in any harm, but it felt like we were in harm because when you're edge walking, you're going where you haven't been before and sometimes where no one else has been. But taking these risks to go on the unknown path does build courage and courage to keep following the nudges that come step in the unknown. Because sometimes in the unknown is where the thing is that you're actually supposed to pursue. Anyway, I'm just starting to talk to myself. I forgot I was recording. So I just wanted to share with you. I kind of got sidetracked, but I wanted to share with you an experience I had last week also in edge walking that is more applicable perhaps to day life for you. As I said, I have been navigating some very difficult experiences, most of which have thrown me into the legal system. For those who know me, this is wild territory. I've never been one for courtroom dramas or legal thrillers. So I did like sitting through To Kill a Mockingbird because I've read the book a couple times. Those are very powerful scenes, but I've always imagined I'd settle things with mediation and mutual understanding. I have no desire to go to court and no need to learn anything about legal terms or navigate the procedures. But as my life often does, it doesn't go as I planned, even though I'll keep planning. So I suddenly found myself facing not one, but multiple cases. So I guess for a long time, I held on to the hope that maybe a miracle would rescue me from it all and that we could actually mediate and that kind of thing. But that's not how it's going. And so it's not supposed to go that way, I guess. So I stopped looking for exit strategies and realized I had to do something about it because, after you spend a few $1,000s, you realize I've got to find another way. It's not working. So part of me is like, maybe I'll go to law school. I looked it up and you can't finish law school faster than 3 years. I mean, there might be one or two where you can do it in two, but no, most of them have you set out to do 3 years of work. I'm like, I just can't do that right now. And part of me is like, I don't think I'm supposed to be a lawyer. But I did find that there's paralegal certifications. So I looked at a couple of them and I'm still getting phone calls from a lot of these universities, but I found a certification through Duke University that meets my needs. It's online, it's self paced, and you have a year to do it, which I don't plan on taking a year. But I really felt inspired and I really liked that it was a reputable organization, I think, a reputable university. I thought, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm like, I'm going to step forward. I'm going to get ready. Then, of course, I looked at my bank account and I'm like, yeah, I'm laid off. I was laid off 2 months ago, part of the big revamps taking place in the government this year. And I've had to use 401ks and I've had to really choose where the money goes, let's say. So here I am, all the money gone because it just keeps going to court and other things. I finally found the thing I think will help me, and I can't pay for it. So you look up a couple scholarships and loans and everything, and I applied to a loan and got rejected. I'm sure you've been there, right? Where you feel so strongly about something, and then it seems like all avenues close. And you're like, wait a second, I thought I was inspired. Like this wasn't something that I was wanting, someone else had it, or because I wanted to prove something. It's like, no kidding, I have this desire and I'm going to do it. And suddenly there's no way. And so, all after all this acceptance and courage and this vision I had of finishing this, I kind of hit a dead end. I went to my temple and I had a prayer in my heart that day. I'm like, God, if this is right, please show me how. Either tell me who to ask for help or have the person come to me. And as I've become more of an edge walker, I've been doing that more. I'm like, okay, you know what? I have tried things. I don't know what to do. You're going to have to bring the person to me or the opportunity to me or have it cross my path. And I didn't want to ask close friends and family. I've had to really learn how to ask people for help in the last couple of years. And it's very embarrassing and hard for me, but I'm getting better at it. And I just didn't want to ask family or friends for a cosign on a loan because the loan I got rejected for said you can get a cosigner and you should be fine. So anyway, I leave the temple I was just there for an hour and I went outside and I'm heading to lunch with a friend before we drive back. We were about 40 miles away from home. And my brother called, one of my brothers, and he checks in every week. He's pretty good about that. He's always like, "Hey Becca, how you doing?" So we chatted for a few minutes and I mentioned I was trying to figure out how to pay for a certification that I decided I really believed in, that I needed to do it, like I had strong feelings about it. And without hesitation, he said, "Why not ask the king of the high credit score?" And it kind of took me back. I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" And he said, "I'll sign for you. That's not a problem. I've got a great credit score. You know, I don't know. I've done all this. Da 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 da. I've got a great credit score." And I was stunned. I'm like, he had no idea that I'd considered this. Like this had all happened very fast, right? He had no idea I'd been praying about it. No idea I'd considered the certification. And yet there he was, out of the blue. He called me. I mean, he was in the middle of working and he called me and he had the solution. I'd taken all these steps. I'd walked forward with no bridge in sight. And then, just like Indiana Jones, the bridge appeared. It was very cool. This is what edge walking looks like. It's honoring your desires. And that's one thing I wanted to say. How do you become an edge walker? You start getting really clear on what your desires are. And for me, that's always been a difficult thing because I'm a Christian and I've been taught, to keep your desires in check and all these things. But the reality is along with that, I think we're given certain desires because we're supposed to do certain things. We're supposed to hum and chip away certain things from our lives and really fully express our talents and to make weaknesses become strengths, right? Where it makes sense. And so that is one thing I'd like to share with you today as part of this is to become an edge walker, to start honoring those desires to come to you, even if you cannot see a way for it to actually happen, that it feels like it would have to be a miracle for it to happen. But if you keep on having desires nag at you, they kind of come to you without your permission, start to honor that and go, wait, maybe there's something there that I need to pursue, right? I like just what I was sharing with the paralegal thing. It came on so strong after I started looking in the law schools. And it wasn't right. All of a sudden, I thought, no, paralegal certificate might fit. All of a sudden, I just was compelled to keep moving forward. It's almost like I didn't have to think about it anymore. I just like, I've got to find a way to do this. There's got to be a way. It's a quiet power that comes to you that propels you forward, going, no, I've got to do this. I have had this enough to know that if you have a desire that keeps nagging at you, often since childhood, it's something you need to look into because it's something that you're supposed to offer the world, or it's something that if you do it will lead you to the thing that you offer the world, right? It's like a stepping stone that you cannot skip over. It is the way, it is the path you need to follow. I'd also encourage you to look at those moments that you automatically respond to saying, nope, I don't do that. Nope, I, that's not me. I don't do that. I'm too scared. I don't want to be that, whatever. Pay attention to those moments when you immediately say no to an opportunity because it doesn't fit your assumptions. I'm writing a separate book about this. I'm kind of excited, and I have a group that I've had to delay, but we're going to do the nope, I don't do that experiences because what I have learned through this process is we have so many assumptions and beliefs in our minds from childhood and from different experiences we've had in our life that we so quickly say, nope, I don't do that to some things that we are absolutely supposed to do. Now, I'm not talking about going rogue and breaking the law type of stuff. I'm talking about these things that we hold back on. And I've talked about this in other episode if you want to go see the Nope, I Don't Do That episode. But I have said, nope, I don't run marathons. Nope, I don't do sauna. Nope, I don't do one-page resumes. Nope, I don't do that kind of crazy thing. Nope, I don't go to court. And guess what? As I have questioned my own assumptions and tried all of those things, a whole new world has opened up to me. I love going to the sauna. I have walked and run a marathon. I have done a triathlon and I'm going to do another one and I'm going to do an Ironman. And I am trying sports that I haven't tried in a long time. And I am writing books I never intended to write. And I am doing jobs I never intended to do. And I am fighting for things I never intended to fight for because I have stopped and questioned my assumptions and found that sometimes those assumptions are keeping us from our best work, from what we are supposed to offer the world. And we are supposed to be helping and serving so many people with those talents and skills. But there are forces in the world that don't want us to offer that, and they want to keep us down. And I think you can figure out what that is. Also, pay attention to the nudges, those nudges that come to you without your permission. They're moments of divine or intuitive promptings. Sometimes it's a whisper in your head, sometimes it's a conversation with someone, sometimes it's something you'll see on YouTube or the TV or on a billboard, something that just comes out of nowhere. And you're like, whoa, I'm supposed to do something with that. That was never my desire, but somehow that is for me. I need to follow it. Pay attention to those desires you've had, honor them, and move forward, taking a step into the darkness, trusting there will be light. Pay attention to the nope, I don't do that moments, because sometimes hidden in the thing you don't want to do is exactly your purpose, or is exactly the thing that will bring you joy and others joy. And pay attention to the promptings, those nudges that come from the heavens and from those people around you. One last thought out of the dozens of thoughts I shared that are meandering, right? You are not walking alone. You're going to feel very alone in the dark sometimes, taking a step into the light. But what I have found in this journey is amazing. One of the gifts of being an edge walker is that you somehow attract or are drawn to other edge walkers. And a lot of them do not know that they are edge walkers yet, or do not know that they need to become one to fulfill their life's purpose. I wanted to share with you that during the pandemic, I was stealth most of the time. I know I was podcasting and I was offering a few courses, but in day to day life, a lot of things have happened. And still, I had a friend that kept showing up. My friend texted me weekly, and sometimes she called. When she found out my son and I were looking for four-leaf clovers on our daily walks, she mailed a letter anonymously and tucked into it some real four-leaf clovers because she was around a place where there were a lot of them. And she would send me videos that were inspirational and talks and thoughtful reflections, even when I didn't return the calls or texts half the time. And I understand now. She knew. She sensed it from me. She knew my challenges and trials without knowing exactly what they were. And she knew that I was having to make difficult choices that I didn't want to make and take difficult steps. And she knew this because she was an edge walker. She was walking on her own edges and going through her own hard choices, the kind that require faith in every single step. And there's no miraculous signs coming your way, and there's no grand confirmations. You're just edge walking. You're having to trust. And because of that, she could feel when someone else was navigating in the dark too. And as I said, she stayed close, whether I responded quickly or not. And so eventually I did start to respond more. I began to give back and I learned what her struggles were. And they weren't identical to mine, but there was a pattern that was identical. And the deeper themes were there. And she was like me, a lot of fear and uncertainty and just feeling like a failure. And she kept at it, and we still talk. She has now gone through cancer multiple times and multiple setbacks with jobs and health and in her family. We're both doing things we don't want to do. But as we've opened up and shared with each other, we've gotten the courage to share with other people. And it's almost like others that are walking on the edge are drawn to us. And so we get to have more and more conversations with people who've gone through really hard stuff and they keep going. I know right now in my life, I spend a lot of time with widowed women, which is nothing that I'd ever planned on. But a lot of these women went through hard experiences in their lives and then they kind of met the love of their life and then the love of their life died and they still keep going. They still go around serving people. They're taking treats to people or quotes, or they'll go on a walk with them by the river and they're just staying busy helping people. And a lot of it is to stay out of loneliness, but a lot of it is because they're just good people trying to keep taking steps into the darkness because they've had to do it so many times, they know there is goodness, even if it's scary. I'm so grateful for them and what I've learned from them because it shows me that, oh, I might be going through hard for extended periods of my life, but there will be moments of joy also. And I have found much of that as I become my more authentic self through this process. And sometimes the only glimpses of light we get come through these connections as you realize, oh, they're going through hard too, and they're still here, and so am I. So I just wanted to share that with you today in case you're someone that feels like you don't want to edge walk or you are an edge walker because you're being forced to, that there are others that are edge walking as well, stepping into the darkness, hoping that the light will appear. You're not alone, and someone out there needs your story to believe they can edge walk too. So keep taking that next step today. Reach out if you need to talk. Reach out if you want to share some more insights that I didn't share today because I didn't follow the plan I was going to follow in sharing this. I know that I'm so grateful for this chance to learn how to edge walk. And now I can truly tell you that I get excited when I have to edge walk in an area because I'm like, you know what? It's worked out so far. I'm becoming my more authentic self. And I'm someone that literally has to walk a lot. When I have to take the mountain trails, when I have to ride the bike, when I have to swim the laps, when I have to kayak. I love doing that. And I'll do it alone if I have to, but it's sure fun having people along for the ride. Okay, my friends, go take a step out of the darkness into the light. And if it's still dark, keep going.